All right, so I promised that if you understand, I think what I understand about Final Fantasy V, every time I start to state something sometimes lately, it's just like, do I actually know it? I don't know. Anyway, hi everyone. Today we are going to be taking a look at the update for JP, what is new, and some hidden stuff for the future, which will all be important in my future upcoming review of Ferris. And don't worry, you won't have to wait too terribly long for it. Uh, I do basically know what I'm going to say about her, and it is generally positive, but I am still kind of thinking about it and whatnot. So let's go. Let's talk about some JP and some global stuff today, shall we? Or, you know what? We'll briefly touch on some global stuff, but that might just be better to keep in a separate video for organization purposes. All right. So with that being said, talking about what we saw today in the update. So the May 1st update was really about Ferris and Syldra, and to be fair, it's uh, it's a really positive update for a lot of different stuff. I think there's actually even a little bit of argument about like who this update was for and who it's going to be really good in the long run, because there is something incredibly interesting and potentially really strong going on here, which has me, excited for it. But yeah, like Ferris, let's first talk about Ferris, because I'm wandering a little bit. First off, for people who are curious, some people have said, hey, Ferris, is she a tank? Is she physical? Is she magical? Well, she is a physical base damage unit with a new gimmick that is basically when she casts one ability, it second casts another ability. And the abilities are new kind of thing. So if there are problems, well, we kind of expected that beforehand because that's the way these things go. But Varys's new ability is as such, and she is a very powerful character, and she is a very defensive character. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to call her a tank because she doesn't have any initial hate, which is one of the major categories of something that I would consider to be essential to a tank in this game. Like, if you're not generated hate from the very beginning of the battle, or can generate it incredibly quickly, I think that, like, with a TP based skill, I think that there's probably a problem in calling that unit a tank, and that's true with Ferris. Ferris has no initial hate whatsoever, and she does have a track blade into Paladin job, but that is not reliable for generating hate fast enough to really be that good. So I do not consider her to be a tank. She is, for all intents and purposes, a mix of a lot of different things, in the same way that some of the other Final Fantasy V characters are. Varys is a potentially really interesting offensive character with very strong defensive capabilities that can also offer support in a unique way. As such, Varys is one of the most interesting characters to come along since, in my opinion, Celeste. Because Celeste offered something really incredibly new at the time that no other unit has or since done. And that, to me, is more exciting than anything. Like, I find that really fun to theorycraft here. And, like, even at the time of this video, while I have been off and on thinking about the theorycraft of how Ferris is to be used, I'm still not entirely sure, because part of me wants ice-water hybrid with the inclusion of Reagan. Part of me wants to throw Amnelis in there to give her even more healing potential and be a real pain in the ass to deal with. And part of me wants to do a ton of other different things. So as for Ferris right now, for people who are really curious about where she's going to land, I don't know. She has good offense, good defense, and pretty good agility, all things considered. So yeah, Ferris is pretty damn good, and I'm pretty happy to have her. Whether or not she ends up being truly broken over time, we'll have to wait and see, but it's looking at least pretty good. So next up, we're going to talk about this VC, and for this VC, I'm bringing in Wotv Calc because it just gives us the numbers all clean and fresh. Starting off with a 345 HP, 133 attack, 3 defense, and 3 agility VC, which is pretty good statted, I feel like, for any physical unit that also, like Varys, is trying to deal, like, put up a defensive wall here. I mean, you get AoE resistance on the unit and accuracy on the unit, two things that I think Water has been missing for a while, so it's quite nice on a bunch of different physical units, as you can see the job listing down here. And you can look at the party effects as critical rate increase, which is just good across multiple units, spirit increase, which is great across units that you want to protect against magical damage, and slash attack resistance penetration of 35, which it's basically for slash units, but hey, there's a bunch of slash units on this card, so it's not too theoretically much of a stretch to say that this VC won't find good use. I mean, heck, you could potentially combine this with light units, you can combine this with dark units, like Sephiroth is on this VC as well as Astoria, Astria, sorry. Both of those characters end up being really fantastic for in combination with different characters. But it's not really much of a stretch to say that this VC is pretty good. It's not straight out broken, but it's not a 90 cost VC, so I wasn't expecting it to be. For what is here, I have to say that the VC looks pretty good, and I'm pretty happy to have it already. Now, that being said, let's talk about Syldra. And Syldra is by far, I think, one of the most oddball things. A limited wind Esper with 40 cost. And if you look here, you can see the stats for it. So like 1200 HP, that's, pretty good, right? What else are we looking at here while I'm just casually pulling something up in the background? 34 TP, 44 AP, 78 magic and 112 attack. Doesn't really push it in one direction or another that I think is like, oh yeah, well, this is fairly obvious of what you would potentially use this unit for. Agility of 17 isn't terrible either. It's not super high, but it's not low either. Like, if we were to just bring in here for a second, Chaos Bahamut. Chaos Bahamut is only 19, and if we go just a little bit further here and just check out, where is he? Like, Odin. Chaos Odin is 18, and if I can find where the heck he is. Where's regular Odin in this pile of units? There he is. Odin is 20, so 17 agility isn't too terrible. I know I have this up, but I'm just saying that this, in terms of an Esper here, if we're looking at a comparison of what an Esper stats are, Syldra is actually pretty decent and fairly comparable to some of the better Espers that are actually out there. And that's before we talk about what Syldra actually is. I mean, Syldra does have a wind-based AoE attack that decreases AoE resistance and decreases wind resistance. Now, both of those things point more towards a wind unit, and yeah, it is a wind Esper, but then we look at the skill tree, and this is just bizarre. So, earth resistance, increased slash attack by a metric truckload. As up in here, this section, we have slash attack, and down here we also have slash attack. We have critical rate, we have Arcana Killer, slash resistance, accuracy, boosting damage for the Esper attack, and increase attack. So Syldra ends up being this kind of really interesting, strong, physical slash-based Esper. It's not like Chaos Bahamut, where Chaos Bahamut is very clearly can be used for any physical unit in the entire game, and it's totally fine. This is a slash Esper through and through, but it's an incredibly interesting slash Esper because it's well into the mirror. It potentially can be built for accuracy. It has a significant, I would say, amount of attack that it can, or you can just go straight slash. This is a generally good slash base Esper for a lot of different units. It could be used for Bartz, could be used for Ferris, and could be used for anyone else that deals the damage type. I think that Syldra is a pretty good get for not necessarily like free-to-players, is a good get for free-to-players who might be missing some of the more physical Espers out there, because yeah, this Esper is just pretty good across the board of different units, past, present, and future. Not going to go so far as to say that it's insane, but Syldra and the VC are a pretty great combination for a 10k investment. So that's good news for people. Now, one of the last things that really needs to be talked about in this update, because I can't think of too much else, because if you're wondering about the Final Fantasy characters, that's next week, the other ones, is the accessory that's coming with the box event here. Now, it is an accessory, as I just said. It does have multiple versions, including a magic version, a vitality version, and a barrier version. Now, the barrier version does have 12 spirit, the magic version has 60 magic, and the vitality version, strangely, also still has 48 magic, which, considering that you might want HP, vitality doesn't look too terribly bad. It also has critical evade across the board of 16, but basically, you have potentially different versions for each of the Final Fantasy V characters. Barrier, definitely, I want to say for Faris, but also for Bartz. Vitality could be for Faris or Bartz. And Magic is obviously Lena, although damned if she'll ever use it. Now, as for the conditional clause of what you're essentially getting off of this, for the Final Fantasy V characters, decrease skill activation time by 200, which is pretty meaningless except on Lena, where, yeah, that's great. But also across all of the characters, increasing human resistance of 5% is particularly notable for making all of these guys just way more defensive. Well, more defensive enough that it's notable. And really notable on Faris, in my opinion, who, as we're about to see a little bit later, is pretty difficult to deal damage when she's over 70%, and this just helps that. You're also getting Silence, Charm, and Doom resistance, all three things that I'm not going to say no to, and Missile resistance of 10%. So it's generally good for multiple different units, but for the Final Fantasy V characters, it's essentially a must, if not for any other reason than just for that human resistance, because top that on top of like missile resistance and the status effect resistance, it's just generally really good here. Lena gets a little bit more out of it, but yeah, pretty nice accessory. Excuse me. So yeah, that's kind of a cursory first, just a look at the update that has happened in JP. I have to say that I really like the look of Syldra. I think that Faris is going to be very interesting to theorycraft and build different teams over the next little bit. And of course, we'll be demoing her soon enough. But I'm still not over my sickness. Yeah. Hopefully this has been a good first look. For Golden Week, there isn't too terribly much that I think is really cough cough incredibly worth talking about, because a lot of the Golden Week stuff is just feels roughly more of the same. Like, yeah, 300 of that, or hey, potentially, you know, I guess UR horns are on sale for 2,000 regular lapis as opposed to 3,000 on JP. There's also like the Faris shop, and this is the one special Golden Week thing that I'll show off here, where you can spend 300 lapis to potentially get like 100 of these, which probably not worth it at this point. But 300 paid lapis for 400 shards is potentially worth it, especially if you are a low level spender. Of course, this is also, I think this is one of the things I'm not sure about, so I'm going to make a bold claim here in this video. This is one of the super job keys where if you use this is like the big thing where it can max an Esper and increase your sex drive kind of thing, right, all in one key. So yeah, this is one of the major things, and I don't think we've ever seen one of these. At least I can't remember the last time we've seen it, but there you go. So yeah, a little bit of a tour of the JP side. There really hasn't been too many improvements or anything, but yeah, look at the content, and looking forward to showing off Faris very shortly. Thanks for watching. See you next time.